so a quick funny story is at 29 years old, I'm jumping into this business and I'm about to turn 30. So my 30th birthday, we go to Tiger Stadium in 1999. So I'm turning 30. It's the last season of Tiger Stadium. A bunch of us are out there. Josh Lewin and Kurt Gibson are on the call.
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with this particular broadcast. And my friends and I have signs up, happy birthday, Brent. And one of my moments, Josh Lewin says, happy 30th to our intern, Brent Valenti. And
wow.
Gibby says, we have a 29-year-old intern. And I took it as a jab. I've had that tape somewhere. It's great. A jab, but it was also inspirational because even in his curiosity to it, there was no failing for me. Right. Like I was going to fail, but I was going to do this. I wanted to get into this business. I saw, again, level of maturity at 29 versus 39 versus 49 is different.
Yeah.
But at that time, I saw this opportunity to make what I wanted to do. And it was not going to be easy.
Hey everybody, this is Caller ID. We're calling about your identity, your direction, and what you're doing with your life. I'm Brandon Davis Wells. Let's dig into what we're really doing here.
Today's guest has spent years helping shape the television experience for a lot of Cleveland Cavaliers fans. So a lot of you folks out there who are from Ohio will definitely relate to that part. But behind every live sports broadcast, there's pressure, there's preparation, creativity, there's trust, all kinds of things that go into leadership and identity. But beyond the career, Brent Valenti's story is about identity, resilience, relationships, and figuring out what meaningful work looks like. He was also one of my various bosses, which is interesting and actually was one of the best. He was clear, set expectations. They were always high, but it was clear what the expectations were. But he also showed that he cared for people outside of the TV truck, which is not always the case in every industry, but in particular, I can tell you in the TV business. So that was always important to me. A senior producer with Emmys for both basketball and baseball, championship ring from the 2016 Cavs title run, but also a husband, father of three, and a friend. Welcome into the call, Brent Valenti.
Hello, Brandon. Thank you. Those kind words. I appreciate that. Appreciate that intro. Very nice. Happy to be part of this. Appreciate it.
I'm glad to have you. And, we're recording this during the playoffs, during basketball season, so it's sort of a natural thing to have you on, and hopefully we'll get this out during the basketball season before it's over, and hopefully our Cavs are still playing. When people hear TV producer for the Cleveland Cavaliers as a job, what do they probably misunderstand? I asked a friend of mine who's a director for ESPN the same question about directing, and his answer was interesting too. But what did they probably misunderstand about what your life and your role is actually like?
I'd say the biggest thing that I share with, spoken to many classes and tours that come through the truck. I think you and I have been in the truck together when tours come walking through. I think the biggest thing that people are surprised about is the fact that we don't just show up at 6:30 for a 7:00 game.
Right.
Walk in, they see the truck, they see all the people, all the monitors, all the this and that and whatever. And, they say, hey, when's your day start? And, in the truck, it starts at 1:00, right? 6 hours before the game starts, roughly. But for a producer, it's preparation, as you mentioned, and planning, and it starts at 7, 8, 9:00 in the morning. So that's one of the biggest surprises, I think, that people find when they start asking questions.
What shaped you maybe early on that you think still shows up in your work today? Because there's a lot of pressure in live TV every day. It's unscripted, right? You script as much as you can to have an idea of a flow of like, here's what we're going to do if this happens and if we can. But what do you think has allowed you to succeed in that role?
I would say, ironically, I would say failure, failing at things and having things go wrong and reacting to them and then judging that reaction later, like assessing that reaction later. Like, we got there. we got to the finish line, we got on the air, or we got to the end of the game, but it didn't go as planned. How did we get there? One of the biggest things besides failure is kind of swallowing your pride. It's a big ego-driven business, as many businesses are. I mean, a day trader has an ego, and a TV producer has an ego, right? Yeah. And as you go through things, you have to swallow that. You have to give it a chance to or put it in the back seat, and then assess your issues and the people you're dealing with, and how do we get to a good resolution so that it's where we want to be. And so I think failing and then learning from those failures, look, we teach our kids every day, like, don't be afraid to fail. The kids, it drives adults, let alone teenagers, not wanting to fail. I'm afraid to fail. And look, I'm still afraid to fail today at 56, but those failures over the years helped get me to, good broadcasts, good relationships, stuff like that.
Did you know when you were growing up you wanted to be in the TV business? So I like to ask people, like, when you're 18, is this what you thought you'd be doing? But
I wanted to at first I wanted to be a marine zoologist. I'm nothing far. The closest I am to that is I live in the Great Lakes, right? I'm around the Great Lakes.
Have you called any Marlins baseball games?
Oh, no, not yet. No, but I did as a kid, and then Miami of Florida was on the list, and then I just didn't really take some of that stuff too seriously as a teenager. Part of the thing is you talk about, I don't want to get too far off pace, but I lost my mom when I was 11, and it was my brother and my dad and I for a long, long, long time. And so, as teenage boys grow without a mom, and my dad did a fantastic job of keeping my brother and I on right tracks. Getting into college was fun. I didn't take it as seriously, so I just kind of went where I threw a couple of applications out there. And then when I saw broadcast journalism, that's kind of when it started, was when I kind of had to decide what I was going to do. I did want to be one of those ESPN anchor guys. $1 million was the funny thing that somebody said back in the day. Some announcer used to do that, and mimicking the Austin Powers and stuff. And so I thought, I'm going to do that. And so then I got off into school and studied all of that. And so that's where it kind of shaped getting me where I'm at. And then it became about experience, and I could go on and on about that. But at some point, you get your base education, and then it's all, and this, Brandon, very well. You need to spend time. You need to fail. You need to take criticism, and then you turn it all into step by step by step.
What was your very first job? Not broadcasting, because I will ask you that, but very first job as a kid.
I worked at a pet shop with my dad's good friend of my dad, ran a pet shop. So I was probably 14, 15. So pet shop and paperboy were the two that I did around 14, 15 years old. Yeah. But this is paperboy that half your listeners will get and half won't. Big old yellow Schwinn that had big old handlebars and huge tires, and the paper on the back, and saddle bags, and went to people's homes. And that also fed some of my love for sports. I used to sit a couple of family friends that I delivered papers to, and, they were sympathetic to my situation of my mom passing at those ages. And so I used to sit and talk baseball with some of these people, and basketball, and that kind of stuff helped shape my love for sports. And so, my dad made sure we had a work ethic. That's, part of this too, is you got to have a work ethic. You got to be able to put in the time patiently, and it's not easy to do.
Yeah.
So, that's where it started, was getting up in a snowstorm or in the rain and loading those papers up and getting them out.
It's such a Gen X answer, isn't it? And it's great, but because, like a lot of us, I didn't have a paper route, but I had friends who did. And I remember staying the night at their houses growing up and being like, no, you're getting up with me and delivering papers at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I was like, okay, we might not even go to bed till after we go deliver the paper.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. That was very, very, very fun. These days it might be a little scarier, just with the way people have become in this world, so to speak. But it's definitely a great base of getting out and activity and putting in the work.
So what was your first job in the sports television business?
I was going to school. I was working for UPS, sorting kind of job, great company, great opportunity. Then towards the end of that, I kind of had a gap between school and work. So I finished schooling, but then I wasn't in the business yet. So I, quite frankly, right after it, I got headhunted by freight company. So I jumped into a freight company with doing a logistics job. Great money, terrible hours. But it was organized. It was organizing 300 drivers a night and getting them on routes and moving freight and stuff like that. And I tell you that part of the story because once I jumped into a trade school in suburban Detroit called Specs Howard School of Broadcasting. I jumped into that and I went into my first studio. And I'd always wanted to be talent, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And I looked around and I said, oh, this is what I want to do. Like producers and directors, they were talking to each other. There was all these different stations, stuff like that. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in that setting. So fast forward to a couple of freelance opportunities with Fox Sports Detroit at the time in the 99, 2000. It started out as just recording things in the studio and then logging them by hand. No typing of it. You had to log it all by hand. So recording games. So it was basically a production assistant position.
Yeah.
Got my feet wet doing some editing. Remember the very first editing thing I did was End of Tiger Stadium. Madonna's had a song, We Will Remember, I think it is.
Oh, yeah. Put
a bunch of video together to it, gave it to my producer, Jeff Bile, one of my great mentors. And he said, this stinks. So he said, he goes, this stinks. He goes, I won't even make air. There's no way. And I was so proud because I connected a song to a heartwarming moment for the city of Detroit and the baseball community. And I'm like, hey, will you run this? And he's like, nope. I was like, what? This took hours for me to do. So that's kind of my long answer. My first job was failing. It was, getting into the business, getting around some certain things. And then in terms of, video and then following it around, wrapping cables, like all that stuff is all kind of part of that. And just kind of, you had to do a bunch of different things. But right out of the gate, I failed. And that just, pushed me more.
Yeah. So from there, I'm fascinated because I think, one of my first jobs was doing stats at 16 for Thunderbolts Arena football, and I did a lot I was a runner, which for people not in the TV business, it means you're getting coffee, you're picking people up at the airport, you're making copies, you're doing a lot of grunt work, and I did that for a couple of years until, like you said, you start to develop. People start to say, okay, this guy's working hard, so at least they know you're going to work hard. And you can learn the other skills. So how did you go from that? I'm fascinated. I mean, you and I are friends, but I've never heard this story. So how did you go from that? And what sort of, what was that journey like?
The crazy part started. So I didn't start this until I was 28, 29.
Yeah.
Like there was when I say there was a gap from post studies at Wayne State University and getting into the business, there was 6-7 years. And I was just, making money, working regular jobs, but they were not satisfying to me. And I met who is now my wife, who knew my dream. I jumped into Specs to do this because she said, look, this is you and you're not that happy. Like, why don't you do what you want to do? And so she kind of a little bit of a nudge, which is why she's Mrs. Valenti today. And she's been Oak the whole time. But that pushed me into that schooling, which then you find the right person. Again, friend of a friend says, hey, come talk to this person at Fox Sports Detroit. So basically the production assistant intern job was just doing those little things. So a quick funny story is at 29 years old, I'm jumping into this business and I'm about to turn 30. So my 30th birthday, we go to Tiger Stadium in 1999. So I'm turning 30. It's the last season of Tiger Stadium. A bunch of us are out there. Josh Lewin and Kurt Gibson are on the call.
Yeah.
I have nothing to do with this particular broadcast. And my friends and I have signs up, happy birthday, Brent. And one of my moments, Josh Lewin says, happy 30th to our intern, Brent Valenti. And
wow.
Gibby says, we have a 29-year-old intern. And I took it as a jab. I've had that tape somewhere. It's great. A jab, but it was also inspirational because even in his curiosity to it, there was no failing for me. Right. Like I was going to fail, but I was going to do this. I wanted to get into this business. I saw, again, level of maturity at 29 versus 39 versus 49 is different.
Yeah.
But at that time, I saw this opportunity to make what I wanted to do. And it was not going to be easy.
Just a brief pause in the podcast with Brent Valenti to encourage everyone out there. Please share, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, send this out to your friends. Really helps when you do those things.
I tell kids all the time, if you're chasing money in this business, you have a long, long run. So that's kind of where I started with, was just getting into the business. And then, as we said earlier, and I'm sorry if I'm bouncing around a little bit,
Oh,
but
that's great.
is you start at the bottom, and it got to a point where, as an intern, Pistons and Red Wings season was about to start, and the producer for the Pistons and the producer for the Red Wings kind of went back and forth over my services.
Oh, wow.
We like what Brent offers. We want Brent here. And then they turn into what you know well is the font assist. And you get a chance to sit on the back bench and watch how things go and input and stuff like that. So then it becomes multiple little jobs.
Yeah. It's the TV industry requires a lot of time and a lot of time on the road. You've been on the road a lot. I always ask folks, like, how have you balanced in your life being a dad, being a husband, being a son, all of those things with work? Because it was a struggle for me too. I spent 10 years just about on the road, and I'm lucky to be still married, to be honest,
Yeah.
right?
It was a great question. And again, I go back to Donna, my wife. She was an oak through it all. She appreciated my passion and this pursuit of what I wanted to do. I got very, very lucky to get around great people. Like, very beginning was Brady Klima, Jeff Bile, Mandy Cohen. These are three people that saw my passion and helped me realize it. And in the process, Donna said, "Hey, whatever you need, then let's go to it." So I made the best of my time when I was home.
Yeah.
I was very active and very present when I was home.
Yeah.
That was fun to do that, because I was able to do it when other dads probably can't, because they have certain jobs. No disrespect to anybody who's a father or a mother, but there were times where, and I mean, to this day, there were times I can be around and do things without the travel. The travels, the running joke is the hotel room is small, the weather is crummy, and it's no fun out here right now. That's what I had to quickly say. But you get excited when you go to Marina Del Rey, and you got a hotel out on the water, and you want to send a picture to your family, and like, oh, look at the sunset. And then back in Northeast Ohio, it's sleeting and 10 degrees.
I learned this the hard way. I wish I had talked to you before I went on the road, because I remember checking in with my wife one weekend, being on the road, and like saying, "Oh yeah, we're at the beach. I think we're gonna have a beer. We're gonna hang out." And she's like, "Well, I've got one sick kid and one kid who, just." Whenever I would leave, all hell would break loose that weekend. Invariably, somebody would get sick, right? There would be something, a babysitter would cancel, whatever. And it took me a long time to realize that.
I will tell you, in my days, and I've traveled for close to 20 years now in this business, on and off. Some years after COVID, it was less travel. You're well aware of that. But before, it was full time, whatever you went. And so baseball trips could last as long as 10 days.
Yeah.
Basketball, I found myself doing a greater passion for basketball, because it's different travel, different game speed, and it's a different conversation. Yeah. But in some of these trips, I will tell you, I have had garage doors fall while I was gone. I've had basements back up. I've had kids get sick. Yeah. I've had dogs run away. Like, it's all happened. And it literally seems like it happens in the first 10 minutes of the trip.
Yeah.
You just get on the plane, you just take off. And then when you land, like, even say 2 hours, then you land and your phone blows up and you're like, "What's wrong?" And you're like, "Oh, the basement's flooded and the dog ran away." And it's like, "Oh, dog hasn't run away in 3 years. So this is odd." So
it's a hard racket. It's a hard life, but it's a good one. Has there been a point in your career where you've been producing for quite a while, but like, two-part question. Number one, the first day that you walked into a truck to produce, do you remember it, and what was that like? And then later on, was there a point where you're like, I think I got this, like it clicked, and you're like, I'm here. Not that I'm saying that you have arrived in any like egotistical way, but like, all right, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, look, it takes a little bit of experience, and then, man, the power in people believing in you is really strong in this business. Like, because you can second guess yourself all the time. And so there's a couple of analogies that, I know you're a baseball guy, you and I are both baseball guys. So I'll use one. So the first time I went into the truck, it was for a pregame show. And again, I'd been in the back bench doing this font coordinating, it's called, and font assist and stuff. And so I knew the lay of it all, stuff like that.
Yeah,
I
and
just
so for people out
remember
there, that's a lot of graphics. So stuff you see come up with like somebody's
graphics.
picture and
Yeah,
their
sorry.
stats and all that stuff. That's
Yep.
what that I mean,
Yep.
it's way more to it, but that's kind of the general idea.
Yeah, look, and I used to do this guy's hitting 250 on a full moon Thursdays, right? You find that stat out. You're like, I
Right.
got the stat, right?
Right.
Then it never made air or something like that. But sitting in that position, you watched from behind the producers and directors. And so you got the idea of what a game flow was, timing, all this stuff, or a show, not just a game, but a show.
Mhm.
So my first show was Tiger's pregame show. And I remember Brandon, man, I thought, and they say you don't need math in life. Try back timing 22 minutes and then going off script when it happens. So I remember being so off time in my first show. And John Keating, God bless him, he's not a great mentor. He's a talent in the Detroit area. He was yelling, and like we came back for our last segment, we had like 42 seconds for our last segment. It was supposed to be 2 minutes. So nowadays, a minute 15 doesn't seem like that much, but you're just way off track. You've got to get your break in and stuff. So my first pregame show was a Tigers pregame show. And I mean, just blew the timing right out of the water. And then, you learn from it. And then you got people as you progress through that, you learn, right? And so you take some bumps and bruises from people verbally or what have you. People are upset. One of the things is it comes to raising our kids, and we learn it in this business too, is A, you got to take criticism. B, you got to be able to fail and bounce back, right? And that's the key, is like being able to take this criticism and not taking it personal, and then moving on to the next step. That's huge attribute to have. So did a ton of pre and post game shows for a few years. Moved to Milwaukee in 2007. That was an opportunity to produce more full time. Milwaukee, right? And that one was with a gentleman named Michael Ladino, terrific, legendary director. So he's kind of been in all three of my stops. And so the story is, to get me to Cleveland, and your rival moment you're referencing was, so as you're piecing together producing opportunities and experience, it's Brewers and Bucks in Milwaukee, and you do it for 4 years. There was a lot of ups and downs there. It was a freelance gig at the time. So if you're not working, you're not making money. And there was,
no insurance. Right.
It was a challenge. So May of 2011, I am with the Brewers and we arrive in Cincinnati. I'm told the Cleveland Cavaliers producing job is available. My director, Michael, is the one who told me that. And he looks at me and he goes, "You're ready. You go for that job. You're ready to do this." And I was like, "What? Really? Move again?" My kids, I just had a third kid in Milwaukee. And so that belief from a very respectable person in the business was my moment, if you will. Him just telling me to go get the job was enough for me to believe in myself and believe I had done enough to do that. So then that got me to Cleveland, to a mutual friend of ours, Bob Pennell, who saw it in me as well, and basically said, "This job's yours if you want it." So,
wow. Well, it's so cool because I think, a lot of folks struggle when they don't have that affirmation. All of us, right? But I've been in a lot of situations work-wise where you don't have that affirmation. And I think I'll just tell you, you've done a good job when I've been in the truck of being that guy to other people too. It's clear that became something that's been ingrained in how you pay it forward, or whatever corny phrase you want to use. Is that right?
yeah, for sure. Look, I think I've shared this story with you in the past and with other people in the past. Look, as you grow and become better at whatever you do in life, you have to take consideration of experiencing people and being guided by people that you don't want to take anything from. The people that are mean, the bad bosses, if you will, horrible bosses, right? Whatever that is. There's plenty of them. There's plenty of them. And it's like you experience everybody, you experience great people. But even a great person can have their pitfalls. And I have them myself, of having something that you just don't want to implement into your pursuit. So I have 5 or 6 people I've encountered over the years. It's not a lot, but it's enough to be like, you know what? I don't like how that came at me. So I'm pretty sure that can't be good going the other way. So I take that into consideration on how to treat people. My father is a very, very passionate, emotional Italian American. I take every one of those traits from him. I feel like transparency is a really good way to manage and lead to a certain degree. Honesty, it's really hard to expect something from somebody if you haven't communicated with them where you want to go, right? And take that input. one-way driving, it's, it doesn't get you anywhere towards your goal if you're not taking in input. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be collaborative effort. So somewhere along those lines, and meeting and watching and being blessed to work with some of the greatest producers and directors in the business,
Yeah.
then, and knowing that their compassion at times, their understanding at times, and their passion, getting them to a good place, getting to a good place of what your goal was for that show or that day.
Yeah. TV is such a team element, right? I as somebody who grew up playing sports, and
Yeah.
I think that's part of what I'm not doing that anymore. And I think the biggest thing I miss is that team element, because you are all trying to pull the rope in the same direction. And if you're not, it only takes one person on that crew to mess up the whole thing.
Yep.
There's a level of leadership that you have to develop, like you've said, and you have. What wisdom would you have for people that are thinking about going into TV or are already in TV? You kind of alluded to it, right? Just, being authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you can speak to that. I'm not sure if there's anything else.
Yeah. Look, I think you hit it right on the head. Like, depending on who you talk to, like, I like having meetings, not all the time, but like in the morning, we start with a meeting. And I think the key, the quick answer to your question is empowering everybody around you. That's how you get people to pull in the same direction, right? The very beginning of the call, you mentioned that things go wrong. How do you adjust, right? The Cavs are down 2 balls coming in. Here's what we do, right? And you think you're ready for that moment, and you're not. You are, but you're not, because you don't know don't know how people are going to react. You don't know any of that stuff. So that being said, I think you bring people together, you empower them, you have to have a clear plan. And then part of your clear plan is, this may not go the way we want it to go. So then how are we going to do it after that? Allowing people, I think one of the most powerful things I've learned as a manager and a leader is, there is hardly anything more powerful than when the plan does fail, and somebody here carries you through it, and then you support them supporting the whole process.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So that could be your director, that could be your graphics person, right? That could be you in the position you used to have when we worked together.
Yeah.
That's his 30,000th point. Do we have the graphic for that?
Yeah.
Somebody's machine failed, but yours didn't. You got us to where we had to be no matter what. Yeah. And that had you helping us get to where we had to go.
It leads me to my next question. Like, what separates people who make it in live TV as a career and those who don't? And I say that because I think there's parts of, like, there's a lot of people who get in it and don't understand what they're getting themselves into. And I tell people, when I was talking with when I was doing career coaching at the university level with students who were thinking about going into broadcasting, I'd say, now look, you have to be good, but you also have to be lucky, and you have to outlast people, because a lot of people are going to fall off the side at some point. What do you think makes the difference between those folks?
I think it's your commitment, your passion. Like I've said this before, like my passion has definitely at times taken my cart, if you will, and roll it over people's toes, right? Or you cut somebody up. Like, my analogy is not great, but
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Sometimes you can be blinded by your passion, but you got to have it to help you move through. Then during that process of pushing through, following your passion, you learn how to treat people along the way, right? You learn that you just offended this person, or you shut them off or something like that, and you didn't mean it. I certainly have never meant it. If anybody's worked with me and been like, what the heck? Again, then becomes the open communication part. Like, you've got to foster an environment where you can share thoughts together.
Yeah.
I have 2 philosophies in this business that I guide by, and you've heard them both from me over the years. Don't do it just to do it, right? You got to have a purpose behind it, have something there. And then, if I don't know it's broken, I can't fix it or address it. So I've preached that to my family, to my colleagues. I don't know you're struggling with your machine in the back of the truck, then I can't adjust, right? And so, or even, hey, you raised your voice during that replay sequence, and that offended me. Okay, then I'm sorry for that, but I need to know it. So, a couple of philosophies there with, your guiding principles have to be, so you have a passion, because that will take you a long way, and then have understanding that that you have to respect people along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting that leadership part. There's a lot of coaching involved in what you do,
Yeah,
and you have to know each person and know, and that's hard because it's a bit of a transient world. You got some people in and out, especially when you go on the road, right? You have different people in the truck, but you
sure.
have to learn people and how to motivate, what to say, like because some people can take negative reinforcement, some people only need positive. There's a lot of that like massaging and psychology involved in your role. Let me ask you, how has your definition maybe of success in your business changed over time? Because you've won awards, you've got Emmys, those kinds of things, and I'm not trying to stroke your ego. I'm saying like, but what means success for you in that role?
I've always gauged it this way, and I'll say this again: working with some terrific people in the work in the business, and the few years in Milwaukee really helped shape this answer
Mm.
for you. And that was working with a gentleman named Michael Lodino,
Yeah.
who's a revered director. And I was just kind of getting into the traveling around the country as a leader, right? The producer director, they come in the truck, the crew reports to them, right? That's kind of the basis of
Yeah.
the structure. The way Michael Odino over the years, and then Jeff and Brady, all these guys I worked with, the way they were greeted, but Michael stands out as somebody that was greeted so genuinely
Hmm.
and excitement out of people that you worked with once a year, sometimes, if not maybe 4 times a year.
Yeah.
And then at home, it was the same thing. And there was this level of comfort that he had with everybody. And they just resonated with me. And I remember I've told Michael this to his face. God, my goal is to have a legacy, for lack of a better term,
No.
of people enjoyed working with
Mm.
me, like they did, right? And not everybody will.
Right.
It's a fact of life. It is, and I've accepted that.
Yeah.
But boy, that was one of my driving things as I got into the second half of my career here, of just wanting to enjoy people. And then when you have that, when I say enjoy people, but enjoying the experience alongside people. And then when you have that, it makes the mistakes easier to deal with, if you will.
Yeah.
Not everything's perfect.
Right.
I don't need to, look at you and I and what we did together. You put a wrong number up or this or whatever.
Yeah.
I know you knew he did it wrong.
Yeah.
You just yell out, "Hey, that's wrong." And then your response was, "Yeah, I know it's wrong." And I'm like, "Well, why is it wrong?" And you're like, "I don't know." And like, that's a natural, and you know this,
Yep.
that's a natural discussion between two
Yep.
people on what ended up on TV.
Yeah.
And eventually you got to get to the bottom, because eventually I have to answer to somebody as to why that said, X when it should have said Y, whatever.
Or why it said "Go Bucks" on the teleprompter or the telestrator, right? Yeah, and we got us
Right?
on dead spin and awful announcing. So I thought Brent stepped out of the truck one day, and it was Michigan Ohio State weekend, and he's a Blue fan, and I'm an Ohio State guy, and I thought, I'm gonna play a little joke on Brent, so I went up and I wrote on the telestrator, because the producer has control of that as well as out at the court, and I said, "Go Bucks," and this was like 3 hours before the game. And so he comes back in, calls it up, and laugh. We have a good chuckle. We clear it. I swear it was cleared. And sure enough, we go to use that telestrator 2 minutes into the game. Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
I've never been so embarrassed in my life.
It's that's happened to me twice in all these years. Another time it was like it was Go Bucks. Another time it was like you could put weather on the telestrator.
Yeah.
And I did the exact same thing happened. You test it, you fax it out, we call it.
Yeah.
And then you clear it. But for some reason, if you didn't do a double clear or some other, this particular telestrator, not knocking the business, you just recall the last version of it. And I remember hitting it, and there was like basketballs and rain coming, and there was lightning on it. Like, it was crazy. It happened in Milwaukee too. So to your question, like, that stuff happens, right? You put the wrong thing up. We've run you've heard the story. I think you were with us. We were on the road. We were in Charlotte. No, we were in Atlanta. We ran a Charlotte Scenic.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Like it happened. Somebody calls up the wrong one, and
right.
That stuff happens. And so back to originally, hey, look, I know you didn't make a mistake on purpose. Nobody's bagging your stuff, right? You run the wrong opens, and so look, how you react to that stuff defines you as a producer. And mine has not always been polite. I'll say that a curse word or two have come out, and but in the end, if you're adult enough to go up to somebody and go, I shouldn't have said that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Which I'm prideful of having done over the years, and that's taken me a long way with getting the crews to respect me like I wanted them to. I hope they would.
Yeah.
With Michael Odino, my other good director.
Quick pause here to encourage everyone out there. If you could share this with 1 or 2 text threads this week, please do. That would help grow the Caller ID podcast. Thanks a lot.
Humility goes a long way. All right, so a couple more questions for you. As you think about your job, I always ask folks this. What brings out your Larry David moment, your curb your enthusiasm, your most frustrated thing that it just triggers you and you can't stand it, versus that Ted Lasso moment where you're the center of Ikigai. You're like, this is the best. I can't believe I get to do this.
Yeah. So I guess my Larry David one would just be, it's kind of more like we cover the game as it is, right? And so when we always joke, are they even trying? We do 100%. We work so hard. And when it's not going well out there on the court or on the ice or on the field, you just have a moment where you look at each other and we're like, why are we trying harder than them? It looks like, that's kind of, no offense to any of these phenomenal world-class athletes. When they're playing crummy, I'm trying to be polite with
they're having a bad day, right?
When they're having a bad game, bad day, getting paid oogles of millions of dollars to play the sport, we go prep this is a matchup. This is great. This is Kyrie Irving against Andrew Wiggins, whatever it was, and it was this is the 2 number one, and then one had 5 points, one had 4, and you did all this build up, and then you're like, well, are they even trying? And so that's there's just it's a great question.
You can't predict what's going to happen. You can
one of the things that you can't, right. And so look at handling some of those pitfalls I mentioned a few minutes ago with humor. You and I have laughed really hard together and had a lot of fun. And I'm gonna tell your fans a story in a second, because this one becomes probably a combination of Larry David versus the Ted Lasso. So let me do the Ted Lasso, so to speak. Look, it's game-winning situations, right? It's when everybody, your fans are all tuned in. How do you deliver entertainment and education and excitement all at the very end of that game-winning shot, whoever it was, right? I've done games with LeBron made them. I've done a game where Max Strus made them, right? And that's when you have literally seconds to get everybody on board, right? This person, you need to have this flashback ready for the last time they hit a game. Serena, Angel, Allie, all your side reporters, you are running onto the court, and you're doing the interview right away so we can keep this momentum and this action, right? Replays, these are what we're doing. Director, make sure you're shooting this. Typically, Dan, our director, is phenomenal and he has the shots ready to go. But you can't assume, because as soon as and that mistake I've made a ton, and where you assume everybody's on the same page. So that moment of, hey, this is what you joke, this is what we trained for. Hey, everybody, be ready. Here's And so that's that cool moment, I think, where you've preached and you've got everybody practiced, you're all there, and then that game-winning moment happens. And they're all covered differently, right? Donovan Mitchell's 71-point game is a bigger moment, and so your plan changes the whole time. So I think as the character that he is, and you had to deal with so many different things as they went, those are those moments where you're just so proud to do this and have that. So no, let me go back. So kind of a combination of the two was our good friend, the beloved and late Fred McLeod, took a shot from Matthew Dellavedova going out of bounds. Fred almost hit his head on that corner. He was done. Well, as your fans of this podcast will attest, you have terrific pipes. And I remember tabbing you, and you were so willing to come in on your time. So this to me was a credit to this made me feel good that you had the respect enough to see my vision.
Yeah.
And you came and voiced our tease that next day. It was very dramatic. It was like, could Fred actually get back in the booth courtside
That was great.
because of the dramatic Aussie that took him out and da da da. I remember writing it really fun. You delivered it terrifically.
Yeah.
I found that tease somewhere in the last year or so. Really, really fun moment. And so that becomes my, hey, look, you got to have fun in doing this. You can't just shoot the game and cover the game, right?
Yeah.
So you and I collaborated on what I would argue is a Ted Lasso, Larry David moment.
Yeah.
Like, we took fun out of something, didn't make it so much about him, but the next game is the next game. And Cavs weren't great at the time. And so it was a fun little thing to do. So that's my long answer to, look, you gotta roll with it. You gotta, when you have people around me like you and the other ones I have now, they realize your passion. It's fun.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk word association before we wrap up.
Sure.
Success.
Fulfillment. I think that's what it is. I think it's got to be more self-fulfillment. Sounds stupid. Like, I'm not a huge monetary, like I don't make X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
I mean, I make it, but it's only come with pursuing my passion. I have 3 daughters. You know this. I want them to be passionate and fulfill what they want to do, and not sitting like you are sitting here. This is one of your passions, and I credit you for doing this.
It leads me to my next one, which is money. What does that mean? Because you said it like it's a tool, it's a something, but like,
it's money is taxing. No, sorry, it's a weird way to say it, but it is, because it's physically, emotionally taxing. You're never going to have enough. You just aren't. Yeah, my word is taxing because of what it does, and it's nice. It comes in one way and goes out the other, right? Our kids get what they want. I again grew up with just my dad, my brother, and I. We didn't have a great means. My dad didn't change his job until he knew we were set, like in terms of care. And then he went out, and he's always been a great salesman. Always has. He started as a probation officer because he had a law degree from University of Detroit, but literally didn't want to be a lawyer. He wanted to take care of us, which is what he did. And then he became a salesman for an ex-NFL player, and he was really, really good at that. That helped me too. My dad was good at his passion in dealing with people, watching him deal with people at Michigan games, Michigan State games, Lions games. Used to go to with him, all these things. His success came from passion, fulfillment, and his money came from chasing his passion. So
I really like
long answer, kind of disconnected there, but
no, I like it. I think it makes sense. You alluded to this one a little bit earlier, but failure.
It's a must. It has to happen. Failure it's terrifying, but again, I'll go there. It can be fulfilling. It can be what you turn it into is what it can do for you is have that thick skin. You know what? That didn't work. I can't tell you how many times, and you've heard him. But you look at Dan Savick, my director, always sits over here. Every once in a while, he's on this side, but he's mostly on this side. And so I have this turn. We're like, I'm sorry, that didn't work. And that's how it's gone forever. And if you ever get him on this platform or you just talk to him, he'll tell you the same thing. You have to be able to handle your failure with composure and let it make you better.
I know this isn't in my script, but I would ask you, that relationship between the producer and the director is a little bit like a marriage, right?
Oh yeah. Like it's a sibling rivalry. I cannot say this enough. I can't use the word blessed enough to come here, have a little bit of a background with Dan from traveling around and seeing him when he comes here. But having somebody there, and this, I know it. There are a ton of producer-director relationships that just don't always go well, and that happens.
Yeah.
I consider myself super, super lucky to have, first of all, worked with the previous ones I mentioned on this call, like the Michael Lodinos and other people that I've worked with, and then have Dan next to me for 15 straight. We just finished our 15th year together.
That's crazy.
And we've had a number of moments where I'm grabbing him, to get his attention. He wants to know better. He wants better guidance from me. Back to a couple of points we've made: transparency, knowing you can improve or do something better. and taking that to him. So we've had conversations inside the truck, outside the truck. Hey, look, what can we not do that? Because in the end, you're also leading 30 people, 40 people.
Yeah.
And so if you two are fighting like cats and dogs in front of everybody else, it is natural for somebody to just lose a little bit of respect for the situation and the leadership team, because we're a team.
Yeah.
We're a team. If we aren't on the same page, the rest are going to question, maybe struggle, and now you're struggling. And not to mention the announcers, because all this we talked about, all this happened in the truck.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you've got a finger on a button to the 3 talent that are on the floor trying to deliver the message, the game, the entertainment.
I think about when I've coached on a coaching staff in a similar way. It's okay if we're going to disagree as coaches, as a director, producer, but there's a way to do it that doesn't impact the players. There's a way to do it that doesn't impact the team in a negative way. Last question for you, Brent, is if you had an opportunity to tell your younger self something, maybe 18, 19, 20, or 29, when your 29-year-old intern self, how about that? There's your giving.
Yeah.
What would you tell him?
It's a little bit of the same, like go for it. Like, don't get deterred. Don't get deterred. You're going to get deterred. You're going to get frustrated, and you're going to want to quit. I've had people tell me, you call back to the school and you have a conversation. They're like, you got to give it a chance. And so I would go back to my 29-year-old, sir, the 19 one, I would probably say, hey, get going sooner instead of 10 years from now.
Sure.
That 19-year-old Brent would have gotten different advice. The 29-year-old Brent, I would just say, to keep your chin up. It's going to get bad. It's going to get frustrating, and then, stick with it. Stick with it.
That's Brent Valenti.
Thanks for listening to the Caller ID podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe with all of your friends on all of your social media platforms. Thanks again. Signing off, Brandon Davis Wells.